We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The gentle hum of Alex Hood's dual monitors filled his home office as his fingers danced across the keyboard. Lines of code reflected in his wire-rimmed glasses, the clock on his desk showing 11:47 p.m. A half-empty cup of coffee had gone cold beside his mousepad, the ceramic surface bearing the faded words, "World's Best Dad," a Father's Day gift from Thomas 3 years ago. At 42, Alexander Hood had mastered the art of late-night coding sessions, a piece Marissa had insisted on buying from that overpriced antique store in downtown Millbrook. He smiled at the thought, remembering how she convinced him it would add character to his workspace. The memory of her enthusiasm that day still warmed his heart, even as his eyes burned from staring at screens for too long. A sudden burst of laughter floated through his slightly open window, cutting through his concentration. The sound was familiar, Marissa's laugh, the one that still made his heart skip a beat after 15 years of marriage. But something about hearing it at this hour made him pause. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he listened more intently. The night air carried her voice clearly, each word a dagger to his heart. Can you believe he still has no clue? 3 kids, all yours, and he's still paying for private school. Alex's hands began to tremble. The monitor's glow suddenly seemed harsh, almost mocking. He rose from his chair, the expensive leather creaking in the silence that followed her words. His legs carried him to the window automatically, his mind refusing to process what he'd just heard. Marissa's voice continued, softer now but still clear enough. I know, Bruce. Sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember how well you've planned everything. Bruce Cummins. The name echoed in Alex's mind, bringing with it a flood of images. Bruce at their Christmas parties, Bruce advising his mother on investments, Bruce holding Lucas at his baptism. Bruce, with his perfect smile and tailored suits, who'd been managing his mother's finances for 16 years. Alex's knees weakened, forcing him to grab the window frame for support. The rough wood beneath his fingers felt more real than anything else in that moment. Outside, Marissa paced the garden path, her silhouette illuminated by the security lights. She wore her favorite silk robe, the one he'd bought her last anniversary. Her free hand gesticulated animatedly as she spoke, unaware of her audience. Next week? Yes, I can make that work, she continued, her voice taking on that playful tone Alex had always loved. Caroline's beach house is perfect this time of year. She's already offered to watch the kids. His mother. Caroline was in on this too. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, forcing the air from his lungs. His grip on the window frame tightened until his knuckles turned white. Memories began flooding back, demanding re-examination. Those emergency calls from the hospital that always seemed to come when Bruce was in town. The frequent financial planning meetings with his mother that ran late into the evening. The way Thomas's eyes crinkled when he laughed, just like Bruce's. Emma's auburn hair, so different from his own dark brown or Marissa's blonde. Lucas's natural talent for numbers, mirroring Bruce's financial acumen. He dismissed these thoughts before, laughing off friends' comments about how little his children resembled him. Genetics are funny that way, he'd say, proud of his secure marriage and happy family. Now each memory twisted like a knife, revealing layers of deception he'd been too trusting to see. Below, Marissa laughed again, the sound now grating against his ears. You always know exactly what to say, don't you? Yes, I'll wear that blue dress you like so much. A pause. I love you too. Good night. Alex watched as his wife ended the call, clutching the phone to her chest with a dreamy smile he'd thought was reserved for him. She stood there for a moment, bathed in moonlight, looking like the woman he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But now he saw her differently, a stranger wearing his wife's face, an actress who'd perfected her role over 15 years of marriage. She turned and walked back toward the house, her silk robe shimming in the security lights. Alex stepped back from the window, moving silently through his office. He couldn't face her, not now. Not when everything he thought he knew about his life had just been revealed as an elaborate lie. His computer screen still glowed with the project he'd been working on, lines of code for a new software feature that suddenly seemed meaningless. The World's Best Dad mug mocked him from the desk. He fought the urge to sweep everything onto the floor, to shatter the carefully maintained facade of his life, just as his reality had been shattered. Instead, he sank back into his chair, his movements mechanical. The leather no longer felt comfortable. Nothing felt right anymore. He could hear Marissa's footsteps downstairs, moving through their kitchen, the routine sounds of their home, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the soft whir of his computer's cooling fan. All seemed to take on a sinister quality. His trembling hands found his phone. Opening his browser, he typed Bruce Cummins into the search bar, something he'd never felt the need to do before. Images loaded. Bruce at charity events, Bruce receiving awards for his financial advisory work, Bruce with his wife Krista at social gatherings. In each photo, that perfect smile beamed back at him, the smile his children had inherited. The sound of Marissa's footsteps on the stairs snapped him back to reality. Quickly, he closed the browser and turned back to his code. The door handle turned, and she appeared in the doorway, still wrapped in her silk robe. "You're still up?" Her voice carried the same warmth it always had, but now Alex heard the artifice in it. "Don't work too hard, honey. Coming to bed soon?" He forced himself to look at her, to smile as if his world hadn't just imploded. "Just finishing up here. Go ahead, I'll be there in a bit." She blew him a kiss, a gesture she'd done thousands of times before, and closed the door. Alex waited until her footsteps faded before allowing his facade to crumble. His hands clenched into fists as the full weight of the betrayal pressed down on him. Tomorrow, he would begin investigating. Tomorrow, he would start planning. But tonight, in the solitude of his office, Alexander Hood allowed himself to feel the full magnitude of his loss. Silent tears fell onto his keyboard as 15 years of memories transformed from treasured moments into carefully orchestrated deceptions. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine and hidden investigation. Alex maintained his normal schedule with mechanical precision while setting in motion a plan that would reveal the full scope of his family's betrayal. His first call had been to Jared Glover, a private investigator recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a messy divorce years ago. They met in a small coffee shop 2 towns over from Millbrook, far from prying eyes. Glover looked nothing like the stereotypical PI. He wore a pressed business suit and carried a tablet instead of a notepad. His eyes, though, had that sharp investigative quality that Alex needed. "Tell me everything," Glover said, his voice low and professional as he stirred his Americano. "Leave nothing out." Alex recounted that night's revelation, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As he spoke, Glover's fingers moved across his tablet, taking notes with practiced efficiency. 16 years of friendship with Bruce Cummins, Glover mused, looking up from his screen. "And your mother's involvement? That's an interesting angle. We'll start there." Over the following days, Glover's updates arrived in encrypted emails, each one revealing another layer of the deception. The first breakthrough came from Caroline's beach house records. "Your mother's property has been hosting regular financial planning retreats for the past 15 years, Glover reported during their second meeting. "Always when you're away on business trips. The utility bills show consistent usage patterns: water, electricity spikes during these periods." Alex's stomach churned as he reviewed the carefully documented evidence. Photos showed Marissa's car parked in the beach house driveway on numerous occasions, always alongside Bruce's Mercedes. Timestamps matched perfectly with her supposed hospital emergencies. The investigation into medical records proved even more devastating. Glover's contact at the hospital's records department had discovered a pattern of falsified emergency calls created to provide alibis for Marissa's absences. But the most damning evidence came from a different medical source entirely. "I've obtained DNA test results," Glover announced during their final meeting, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. "They were conducted at a private facility in the next state. Bruce Cummins ordered them shortly after each of your children was born." Alex's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. The clinical language of genetic testing spelled out what he'd already begun to suspect. Thomas, Emma, and Lucas shared no DNA with him. All 3 children's genetic markers matched perfectly with Bruce Cummins. "There's more," Glover continued, his voice gentler now. "I've uncovered a series of email exchanges between your mother and Marissa dating back to before your wedding. They? You should read them yourself. The printed emails told a story that made Alex's blood run cold. His mother had orchestrated the entire relationship, believing Bruce to be a better match for Marissa, but unable to convince her son to break off the engagement. Instead, she created opportunities for Bruce and Marissa to meet, encouraged their affair, and helped maintain their deception for over 15 years. One email from Caroline to Marissa, dated just before the wedding, was particularly revealing. Bruce is the better choice, dear, we both know that. But Alex is stable, successful enough, and completely devoted to you. This way, you can have everything, Alex's stability and Bruce's passion. Trust me, I've thought this through carefully. The betrayal had been methodically planned and executed from the very beginning. His entire marriage had been a carefully constructed lie, with his own mother as the architect. Financial records painted an even clearer picture. Bruce had been channeling money through various accounts, creating a safety net for Marissa and the children. Caroline had helped manage these transactions, using her position as the family matriarch to hide the money transfers within legitimate business dealings. Your mother's beach house isn't just a meeting place, Glover explained, pulling up more documents on his tablet. It's been used as collateral for several investments in Bruce's name. The property itself is part of a complex financial arrangement that benefits both Bruce and Marissa. Alex sat back in his chair, the weight of each revelation pressing down on him. The coffee shop bustled around them, people going about their normal lives while his world continued to unravel with each new piece of evidence. What about Bruce's wife? Alex asked, suddenly thinking of Krista Wagoner Cummins, the elegant woman who'd attended countless family dinners, unknowingly sitting across from her husband's mistress. Glover shook his head. No indication she knows anything. She's as much a victim in this as you are. Though, he paused, checking his notes, there's evidence suggesting Bruce has been moving assets away from their joint accounts for years. He's been preparing for something. The investigation had uncovered a web of deception, so intricate that it took Glover nearly 30 pages to document all the connections. Bank statements, property records, medical files, and surveillance photos painted a picture of betrayal that spanned more than a decade and a half. Mr. Hood, Glover said as their final meeting drew to a close, in my 20 years as an investigator, I've never seen anything quite like this. The level of planning, the duration of the deception, it's unprecedented. Alex nodded, his face a mask of calm that belied the storm raging inside him. Thank you for your thoroughness, Mr. Glover. Your final payment will be transferred today. As he drove home that evening, Alex's mind wandered to his children. No, Bruce's children. Despite everything he'd learned, he couldn't help but see their faces. Thomas concentrating on his homework at the kitchen table, Emma practicing her violin in the living room, Lucas building elaborate structures with his Lego sets. They were innocent in all this, yet their very existence was proof of the betrayal. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy at home. Each morning, he kissed Marissa goodbye as she left for the hospital. Each evening, he helped the children with their homework, played games with them, told them bedtime stories, all while carrying the knowledge that every moment of his family life had been built on lies. But Alexander Hood was no longer the trusting husband who'd stood at that window 2 weeks ago. With each piece of evidence Glover uncovered, a new version of himself emerged, calculating, patient, and determined to orchestrate a reckoning that would shake Millbrook's foundations. Miranda Hughes's office embodied everything about her reputation: sleek, imposing, and meticulously organized. Alex sat across from her desk, watching as she methodically reviewed Glover's findings. She paused, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses, remarkably comprehensive. Your investigator did excellent work. She looked up, her sharp eyes studying Alex's face. The question is, what do you want to do with it? Alex had chosen Miranda specifically for her reputation. She wasn't known for being kind or understanding. She was known for being ruthless and effective. Her office walls displayed news articles about her most notable cases, each one a testament to her ability to destroy opponents in court. I want everything, Alex replied, his voice calm but firm. But I want it done right. No room for countermoves, no chance for them to prepare. I want them to feel as blindsided as I did. Miranda's lips curved into a slight smile. Then we'll need to be strategic. First, we'll need to secure your assets. I assume you haven't confronted any of them yet? No. I've maintained everything as normal. Good. Keep doing that. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Janet, get me Gustavo Goodrich on the line. Priority call. Within an hour, Gustavo Goodrich joined them. The financial advisor's reputation matched Miranda's. He specialized in high-stakes divorce cases where assets needed to be protected and relocated quickly and legally. The timing needs to be perfect, Gustavo explained, spreading documents across Miranda's conference table. We'll need to move your assets in stages, nothing too obvious. Offshore accounts, blind trusts, legitimate business investments that can't be easily traced or contested. The next several hours were spent crafting a strategy that would leave nothing to chance. Alex's software company would be prepared for sale, its assets protected through a complex series of transactions. Personal accounts would be secured, properties reassigned, and investments restructured. What about the children? Alex asked, the question he'd been dreading to voice. Miranda's expression softened slightly, the closest she came to showing sympathy. Legally, you could contest custody based on fraud, but given the DNA evidence, she let the sentence hang. I won't put them through that, Alex decided. They're innocent in this, but I want to ensure they're provided for, through channels that neither Marissa nor Bruce can access. Gustavo nodded, making notes. We can set up independent trusts for each child. Ironclad terms, professional trustees, no possibility of interference from any party. The planning continued late into the evening. Every aspect of Alex's life was examined, every vulnerability addressed. Miranda's assistant brought in dinner as they worked, the empty takeout containers piling up as hours passed. The hardest part, Miranda warned, will be maintaining normalcy at home while we put everything in place. One slip, one hint that something's wrong, and they might start moving assets themselves. Alex thought of the previous evening, helping Emma with her math homework. She looked up at him with Bruce's eyes, asking for help with fractions. The pain had been almost unbearable, but he'd smiled, explained the problem, and praised her progress. I can handle it, he assured them. I've been handling it for 15 years without knowing. I can manage a few more weeks. The next days fell into a careful routine. Mornings began with family breakfast, Alex watching as Marissa packed lunches for her and Bruce's children. He'd kiss her goodbye, tasting the lies on her lips, then drive to work as if nothing had changed. During the day, he methodically prepared his company for what was to come. Private meetings with his executive team focused on restructuring, carefully worded to suggest routine business optimization rather than preparation for sale. Each decision was calculated, each movement precise. The evenings were the most challenging. Family dinners around their mahogany table became exercises in self-control. Alex would listen to Thomas talk about his soccer practice, noting how the boy's animated gestures mirrored Bruce's mannerisms. Emma would practice her violin after dinner, the melody haunting the house while Alex sat in his study, pretending to work while actually coordinating with Gustavo through encrypted emails. Lucas, the youngest at 9, proved the most difficult to face. One evening, as Alex helped him build a model rocket, the boy looked up with pure admiration in his eyes, Bruce's eyes, and said, "You're the best dad ever." The words struck like physical blows, but Alex maintained his smile. "Thanks, buddy. Hand me that glue, would you?" Meanwhile, the machinery of his revenge ground forward with relentless precision. Gustavo had created a complex network of financial transfers, each one legal but deliberately difficult to trace. Assets were being moved through multiple jurisdictions, eventually landing in places where they would be virtually impossible to recover. The beauty of it, Gustavo explained during one of their secure video calls, is that everything appears completely normal on the surface. We're not hiding anything. We're just relocating assets through perfectly legitimate channels. Miranda's part of the plan was equally meticulous. She prepared documentation for every possible scenario, anticipating any legal challenges that might arise. Her team worked discreetly, building an airtight case while maintaining absolute confidentiality. "We've documented every instance of fraud," she reported during a late-night meeting in her office. "The DNA tests, the financial deceptions, your mother's involvement, Everything. When we move, they won't have any room to maneuver. The hardest part was watching Marissa continue her deception. She maintained her routine of emergency hospital calls, each one now transparent to Alex as another meeting with Bruce. He noticed how she always wore specific jewelry on these days, pieces he hadn't bought her. The blue dress she favored for these encounters hung in their closet like a silent accusation. Caroline's weekly visits became exercises in restraint. His mother would arrive bearing homemade cookies, doting on the grandchildren she had helped orchestrate into existence. She would ask about his work, about his plans, all while knowing she had helped destroy the foundation of his life. "You're working too hard, dear," she said during one such visit, reaching out to touch his arm. "You look tired. Perhaps you should take a vacation?" Alex had smiled, wondering if she was hoping he'd leave town so Bruce and Marissa could use the beach house again. "Too busy right now, Mom. Maybe later." The children remained his anchor to sanity. Despite knowing the truth about their parentage, Alex found he couldn't stop loving them. They were victims of this deception as much as he was. Each night, he would check on them as they slept, their innocent faces peaceful in the darkness. He established the trust funds as planned, working with independent trustees who would ensure the children's financial security regardless of what happened to any of the adults involved. The documentation was carefully worded to protect them from any fallout while ensuring neither Marissa nor Bruce could access the funds. "These trusts are bulletproof," Gustavo assured him. "No matter what happens, the kids will be taken care of." As weeks passed, Alex's transformation continued. The trusting husband who had stood at his office window that fateful night was gone, replaced by a strategist who saw every interaction as a move in an elaborate game. He noted every phone call Marissa made, every meeting his mother arranged, every coincidental encounter with Bruce at social events. Each piece of evidence was carefully cataloged and added to Miranda's growing arsenal. Bank statements, phone records, surveillance photos, all building toward the moment when the truth would finally be revealed. The facade he maintained was perfect. He attended school functions, hosted dinner parties, played golf with business associates, all while orchestrating the systematic dismantling of the lies that had shaped his life for 15 years. "Your poker face is remarkable," Miranda observed during one of their meetings. "But remember, when the time comes, you'll need to be prepared for the emotional fallout. This isn't just about the legal and financial aspects." Alex nodded, his expression neutral. "I've been processing the emotional aspects for weeks now. When the time comes, I'll be ready." As autumn deepened and the leaves in Millbrook began to turn, Alex's preparations neared completion. The pieces were in place, assets secured, evidence compiled, legal documents prepared. He had become the architect of a different kind of deception, one designed not to maintain lies, but to expose them. In his home office, late at night, he would sometimes stand at the same window where he'd first overheard Marissa's phone call. The garden below was empty now, the flowers fading with the season. Soon, very soon, everything would change. But for now, Alexander Hood maintained his vigil, a silent strategist preparing to unmask 15 years of betrayal. Autumn in Millbrook painted the trees in brilliant shades of amber and crimson, a stark contrast to the gray clouds gathering above the Hood residence. Inside, the house hummed with pre-Thanksgiving activity. The aroma of roasting turkey and fresh-baked pies wafted through the air, masking the tension that Alex carried in his shoulders as he adjusted the formal place settings at the dining room table. "Everything needs to be perfect," he murmured, straightening a silver fork for the third time. Each place setting contained 2 envelopes, one tucked discreetly under the napkin, another hidden in his study. Timing would be everything. Marissa bustled around the kitchen, her designer dress protected by an apron that read, "Kiss the Cook." She'd been up since dawn, preparing what she thought would be another showcase Thanksgiving dinner for their social circle. The irony of her domestic performance wasn't lost on Alex. "Honey, could you check if your mother needs help bringing in her pies?" Marissa called out, wiping her hands on her apron. "You know how she insists on making them herself." "Of course," Alex replied, his voice steady despite the knowledge of what was to come. The manila envelopes in his study felt like live ammunition, waiting to be deployed. The doorbell chimed. Bruce and Krista Cummins arrived first, perfectly coordinated in autumn colors. Bruce carried a bottle of expensive wine. Alex recognized it as the same vintage they'd shared at his 40th birthday celebration. "Alex, my friend." Bruce's handshake was firm, his smile confident. "Beautiful day for a family gathering." Krista air-kissed Alex's cheeks, her designer perfume lingering in the air. "The house looks lovely." "Marissa's outdone herself again." Alex watched as Bruce's eyes flickered toward the kitchen where Marissa was working. A subtle glance, one he'd seen countless times before, but had never understood until now. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. Drinks are in the living room." Caroline arrived next, bearing her signature pumpkin pies. Her gray hair was perfectly styled, her outfit carefully chosen to project the image of the doting grandmother. "There's my boy," she beamed, reaching up to pat Alex's cheek. "Help your mother with these, won't you?" More guests arrived, carefully selected witnesses to what would unfold. James and Patricia Wellington from the hospital board where Marissa worked. Richard Chun, Bruce's business partner. Sarah and Michael Davidson, neighbors whose teenage daughter babysat for the Hoods. The children were at the kitchen island, helping with last-minute preparations. Thomas stood tall, his movements mirroring Bruce's confident mannerisms. Emma arranged flowers in a vase, her auburn hair, Bruce's hair, caught in the afternoon light. Lucas sat swinging his legs, working on a math puzzle that showed the same aptitude for numbers his biological father possessed. "Everything's ready," Marissa announced, removing her apron to reveal her carefully chosen dress. "Shall we begin?" The guests settled around the massive dining table, a tableau of affluent suburban life. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier light. Silver cutlery gleamed against crisp linen napkins. Each place setting concealed its explosive secret. Alex rose to give the traditional toast, crystal glass in hand. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him expectantly. This was the moment weeks of preparation had led to. "Before we begin," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the table, "I have something to share with a few of you." He reached beneath his own napkin, making a show of discovering the envelope. "Oh, look at this. There seems to be one for each of you." Confusion flickered across faces as others found their envelopes. Marissa's perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly as she lifted hers. Bruce's confident smile wavered. Caroline's hand froze halfway to her glass. "Please," Alex continued, his voice taking on an edge that made several guests shift uncomfortably, "open them. I insist." The sound of tearing paper filled the silence. Alex remained standing, watching as the carefully orchestrated moment of revelation unfolded. Krista was the first to react. Her sharp intake of breath cut through the room as she stared at the photographs of Bruce entering Caroline's beach house, Marissa at his side. Dates stamped in the corner matched his supposed business trips. Bank statements showed regular transfers to offshore accounts. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice rising. "Bruce." But Bruce was staring at his own envelope, face draining of color as he recognized the DNA test results. His eyes darted to the children, who watched the scene unfold with growing confusion. Marissa's hands shook as she read through her dossier. Emails between her and Caroline spanning 15 years, planning meetings, coordinating deceptions. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the blood draining from her face. Caroline's envelope contained trust fund documents showing Alex's systematic dismantling of her control over family assets, along with copies of her own emails proving her role as architect of the deception. "How dare you?" Krista's voice shattered the silence. She grabbed her wine glass, its contents arcing through the air to splash across Bruce's expensive shirt. 15 years? All 3 children? The room erupted into chaos. Patricia Wellington gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Richard Chun stood abruptly. The Davidsons exchanged horrified glances. "Alex," Caroline started, her voice trembling. "I only wanted what was best." "Best for whom? Mother?" Alex's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Best for your son, whose life you helped destroy. Or best for your friend Bruce, whom you thought was a better match." Marissa sat in stunned silence, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The children looked between the adults, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension. "Dad," Thomas's voice quavered. "What's happening?" Alex turned to the children, his heart breaking anew. I think it's time for you three to go upstairs. Sarah, would you mind? Sarah Davidson quickly ushered the children out, throwing a sympathetic glance over her shoulder. The sound of their footsteps on the stairs seemed to echo through the house. You couldn't just confront us privately? Bruce finally spoke, his usual confidence replaced by cold anger. You had to make a spectacle? Like the spectacle of being best man at my wedding? Alex's reply was ice. Or the spectacle of being godfather to your own children while I remained ignorant. No, Bruce. You all chose your audience years ago. I'm simply providing the final act. Krista's tears had given way to fury. My lawyer will be in touch, she spat at Bruce. Expect to hear from Valerie Stevens first thing tomorrow. Now, let's not be hasty, Bruce began, but Krista cut him off. Hasty? Like hiding assets for years? Planning a second family behind my back? Miranda Hughes has already been contacted. Hasn't she, Alex? She turned to him, a new ally in destruction. Alex nodded. Everything's prepared. Every account, every transaction, every meeting at the beach house. There's nothing left to hide. Caroline reached for her son's arm. Alexander, please. We can explain everything. He pulled away from her touch as if burned. Explain? Like you explained to Marissa before our wedding how she could have everything. My stability and Bruce's passion? I read the emails, Mother. Every single one. The carefully prepared dinner grew cold, the turkey forgotten as 15 years of deception unraveled around the Thanksgiving table. Outside, the gathering storm finally broke, rain lashing against the windows like nature itself was trying to wash away the lies. You'll destroy everything, Marissa finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. No, Alex corrected her, his calm more terrifying than anger. You destroyed everything the moment you decided to build our marriage on lies. I'm simply revealing the truth. Now, I believe dinner is served. He sat down at the head of the table, surrounded by the wreckage of relationships and the smell of cooling food. The perfect Thanksgiving dinner had become a feast of consequences, each course flavored with bitter revelations and shattered trust. The rain continued to fall outside, marking the beginning of a storm that would reshape the lives of everyone at the table. In his pocket, Alex felt the weight of the second envelope, the one containing the next phase of his carefully orchestrated plan. But that would wait. For now, he watched as 15 years of deception consumed itself in the warm light of his dining room chandelier. The weeks following the Thanksgiving revelation unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of destruction. Miranda Hughes's office became ground zero for the dismantling of 3 marriages and a family empire. The divorce proceedings will be swift, Miranda explained to Alex, spreading documents across her mahogany desk. Your evidence is comprehensive and frankly, they have no ground to stand on. Across town, in another high-rise office, Valerie Stevens was having a similar conversation with Krista Cummins. The two women had formed an alliance of vengeance, their combined legal assault leaving Bruce's carefully constructed financial facade crumbling. Every hidden account, every secret transaction, Valerie detailed, her red lacquered nails tapping against her tablet. Your husband's been planning for this possibility for years, but he didn't count on us finding his overseas holdings. The children remained at home with Marissa, protected from the immediate fallout by their physical absence from the Thanksgiving reveal. Alex's decision to refuse custody had surprised everyone except Miranda. Are you certain about this? Miranda had asked during their initial post-Thanksgiving meeting. The courts might be sympathetic, given the circumstances. Alex's response had been firm. They've lost one father figure. I won't make them lose their home too, but I want the trust funds ironclad. Neither Marissa nor Bruce gets access to a single penny meant for the children. The trust fund arrangements became a masterpiece of legal architecture. Independent trustees, strict disbursement conditions, and educational provisions that would ensure Thomas, Emma, and Lucas would want for nothing despite their parents' choices. Marissa's attempts to contest the divorce terms met with swift, devastating responses. Each challenge was met with another piece of evidence from Alex's carefully compiled dossier. Her lawyer, James Patterson, finally advised her to accept the terms. Mrs. Hood, Patterson had said, his voice heavy with resignation. Mr. Hood's evidence is extensive and irrefutable. Fighting this will only deplete resources better saved for your children's future. The hospital board, presented with evidence of Marissa's falsified emergency calls, launched their own investigation. The prestigious position she'd held for years suddenly seemed precarious. Bruce's financial empire began to crumble under the combined assault of Alex's evidence and Krista's legal team. His clients, many of whom were prominent Millbrook residents, began quietly withdrawing their accounts. The scandal had spread through the town's social circles like wildfire. "He's losing everything," Krista informed Alex during one of their strategy meetings. Her initial fury had hardened into cold determination. The house, the summer properties, most of his clients. It's what he deserves. Caroline's attempts to protect her assets proved futile. The family trust, which she'd used as a tool to maintain control over her son's life, had been systematically dismantled. Her social standing in Millbrook, built over decades, evaporated as her role in the deception came to light. "I only wanted to protect you," she pleaded during an unsuccessful attempt to meet with Alex at Miranda's office. "Bruce had the connections, the influence. You thought you knew better than your own son," Miranda had interrupted, her tone glacial. "The documents say otherwise, Mrs. Root. Shall we review them again?" The children's reaction, when finally told a carefully edited version of events, was heart-wrenching. Thomas, the oldest at 14, had locked himself in his room for days. Emma stopped playing her violin, the instrument case gathering dust in the corner of her room. Lucas, too young to fully comprehend the adult complexities, simply asked when he would see his dad again. Soon, Marissa had promised, though she had no idea if it was true. The light in her children's eyes, once so bright with innocence, had dimmed with the weight of adult deceptions. Bruce made one attempt to reach out to his biological children, sending a letter through his lawyer. Alex intercepted it through Miranda, adding it to the growing file of evidence. "He's trying to establish a parental relationship now?" Miranda's disgust was evident. After 15 years of playing family friend and godfather, the divorce proceedings moved with unprecedented speed, thanks to the overwhelming evidence and Marissa's eventual capitulation. The financial settlements were brutal but clean, leaving no room for future claims or complications. "It's done," Miranda announced one gray afternoon, sliding the final papers across her desk. "Once you sign these, you're legally free of all of them." Alex's pen hovered over the signature line. "And the children's trusts?" "Absolutely secure. The trustees have their instructions, and the funds are protected from any attempts at access by Marissa or Bruce. They'll be provided for through college and beyond." The pen scratched across paper, the sound somehow louder than it should have been. Years of marriage, of family life, of trust and betrayal, reduced to a few signatures and legal stamps. Outside Miranda's office windows, Millbrook continued its daily rhythm, unaware that one of its most prominent families had just been officially dissolved. Snow had begun to fall, the first of the season, covering the town in a blanket of white that seemed to mock the idea of purity. "There's one more thing," Miranda said, reaching for a final folder. "The sale of your company." But Alex was already ahead of her, pulling out his own documents. The next phase of his plan was already in motion, though only he knew its full scope. The company sale had been arranged weeks ago, the terms negotiated through intermediaries to maintain absolute privacy. "Everything's prepared," he assured her. "The transfer will be complete by the end of the week." Miranda studied her client's face, noting the transformation that had occurred since that first meeting weeks ago. The betrayed husband had become something else, something harder, more focused, more dangerous in its quiet certainty. "What will you do now?" she asked, though she suspected he wouldn't give her a complete answer. Alex stood, looking out at the falling snow. In his mind, he could see the next steps unfolding, each one calculated and precise. But those plans would remain his alone, shared only with those who needed to know specific parts. "Now," he said, "I disappear." The snow continued to fall outside, erasing tracks, covering signs, making everything look clean and new. But beneath that pristine surface, Millbrook was changing. 3 marriages had ended. A financial empire was crumbling. A family had shattered. and Alexander Hood was about to vanish, leaving behind a wake of destruction that would reshape the town's social landscape for years to come. The art of disappearing, Alex discovered, required as much precision as the revenge he'd just orchestrated. Each step had to be carefully planned, each trace thoughtfully erased or redirected. The sale of his company to a competitor had been just the first move in a complex game of personal chess. Luther Haney's Singapore office overlooked the Marina Bay, the city-state's famous skyline reflecting off the water like a promise of new beginnings. The old college friend had received Alex's call with immediate understanding, no questions asked about the urgency or need for discretion. "Everything's arranged," Luther assured him via secure video call, his image slightly distorted by encryption. "The apartment, the necessary introductions, the basic infrastructure you'll need. When can you leave?" Alex glanced around his nearly empty home office, most of his personal items already packed or disposed of. "The company sale finalizes tomorrow. I'll be on a plane the day after." The mechanics of vanishing proved surprisingly complex. Miranda Hughes had handled the legal aspects, ensuring everything was properly documented while revealing nothing about his destination. Gustavo Goodrich had created a labyrinth of financial transfers that would make tracking his movements nearly impossible. "Your assets are secured," Gustavo confirmed during their final meeting. "The transfers will complete through various jurisdictions over the next few weeks. By the time anyone thinks to look, the trail will be cold." The hardest part wasn't the logistics, it was the children. Alex spent one last evening in his study, writing 3 letters to be delivered years in the future. Each one explained his actions, his love, and his reasons for leaving. Miranda would hold them until the right time, when they were old enough to understand. "Dear Thomas," he began the first letter, his pen hovering over the expensive stationery. "By the time you read this, you'll be 18, and you'll know the truth about everything that happened." He wrote until dawn, pouring his heart into each letter, explaining his choices, his love, and his hopes for their futures. The trust funds would ensure their education and opportunities, but these letters would give them something money couldn't buy: understanding. The day of his departure arrived with a crisp winter morning. His home, now empty of personal belongings, echoed with memories he'd never revisit. He walked through each room one last time, remembering the life he'd built and lost. In the kitchen, where family breakfasts had once filled the air with laughter and the scent of coffee. In the living room, where Emma had practiced her violin while Lucas built his Lego cities on the carpet. In Thomas's room, where father and son had spent countless hours discussing soccer strategies and school projects. His final stop was his office, where everything had begun that autumn night. The window still looked out over the garden, though the flowers were long dead now, buried under winter's first snow. He touched the glass one last time, remembering Marissa's voice floating up through the darkness, shattering his world. Luther's arrangements proved flawless. A private car arrived exactly on schedule, the driver discreet and professional. Alex's luggage, carefully curated to reveal nothing of his destination, was loaded without fuss. "The first flight is to London," Luther had explained during their last call. "Then a series of connections that'll make tracking impossible. By the time anyone realizes you're gone, you'll be established somewhere they'd never think to look." Miranda met him at her office for a final review of the arrangements. "Everything's in place," she confirmed, her usual businesslike tone softened slightly. "The letters for the children are secured in my private safe. The trust fund arrangements are ironclad. The company sale is complete." She paused, studying his face. "Are you sure about this?" Alex nodded, tucking the documents into his briefcase. "It's the only way. They all took everything from me slowly, piece by piece, over 15 years. Now I'm choosing to leave on my own terms. What should I tell them when they ask?" "Tell them whatever you want. By then, I'll be gone." The international terminal at the airport hummed with pre-dawn activity. Alex walked through security with his new documents, each step taking him further from the life he'd known. His phone, his old phone, rested in Miranda's office safe, along with every other traceable connection to his past. As he waited at his gate, he thought about what he was leaving behind. The ruins of his marriage, the betrayal of his mother, the children he'd raised and loved, who would have to find their way without him. The company he'd built from nothing, now sold to competitors who would reshape it in their own image. But he was leaving something else too. The naive trust that had allowed others to deceive him for so long. The belief in family bonds that couldn't be broken. The assumption that love was enough to ensure loyalty. The morning sun broke through the airport's massive windows as his flight was called. Alex stood, shouldering his carry-on bag. He handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, not looking back at the terminal, at the city beyond, at the life he was leaving behind. As the plane lifted off into the dawn sky, banking over Millbrook one last time, Alex closed his eyes. Below him, his past grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely, lost in the clouds that separated him from everything he'd once believed was true. In his briefcase, Luther's detailed instructions waited alongside new identification documents and banking information. Somewhere across the world, a new life was taking shape, one that would be entirely his own, free from the web of lies that had entangled him for so long. The plane climbed higher, leaving Millbrook, its secrets, and its betrayals far behind. Alexander Hood, the betrayed husband, the deceived son, the non-biological father, vanished into the morning sky, becoming someone else entirely, someone whose story was yet to be written. In his wake, he left a town in turmoil, a family in ruins, and a legacy of truth that had shattered the careful facades of Millbrook's most respected citizens. But most importantly, he left on his own terms, choosing the manner and moment of his disappearance, denying them the satisfaction of seeing the impact of their betrayal. Miranda Hughes stood at her office window, watching the contrails of Alex's plane dissolve into the winter sky. On her desk, 3 sealed letters waited in their envelopes, each marked with a future date and a child's name. The final pieces of Alexander Hood's carefully orchestrated exodus were in place. The snow continued to fall over Millbrook, covering everything in clean, pure white, as if trying to erase the events of the past weeks. But beneath that pristine surface, nothing would ever be the same. The man who had exposed 15 years of lies had vanished, leaving behind a town forever changed by the truth he'd revealed. The Singapore skyline glittered against the pre-dawn sky as Alexander Hood reviewed the final acquisition documents. At 52, he barely resembled the man who had fled Millbrook a decade ago. His dark hair now carried distinguished streaks of silver at the temples, and years of martial arts training had transformed his once soft programmer's physique into lean muscle. But the biggest changes weren't physical. They were written in the steel of his gaze and the quiet confidence of his movements. The Millbrook Tech Park acquisition papers are ready, Mr. Hood, his executive assistant, Wei Chun, announced, placing a leather portfolio on his desk. The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Alex checked his Patek Philippe watch, a small indulgence that marked his first billion, and nodded. Thank you, Wei. Is the video conference set up? Yes, sir. Though I still think you should consider handling this in person. Alex's lips curved in a slight smile. Hood Innovations occupied the top 10 floors of Singapore's most prestigious business tower, a far cry from his humble startup days. The company had revolutionized supply chain management through blockchain technology, becoming a major player in the Asian tech market. Now, it was time to return home on his terms. The video conference screen flickered to life, revealing the Millbrook Tech Park boardroom. 10 years had changed the faces around the table, but not the desperate hope in their eyes. The once proud technology hub of Millbrook had fallen on hard times, making it perfect for Alex's purposes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Alex's voice carried the subtle authority of success. Let's discuss the future of Millbrook Tech Park. Board Chairman David Foster, his hair grayer than Alex remembered, leaned forward. Mr. Hood, while we appreciate Hood Innovations' interest, some board members have expressed concern about a remote acquisition. Remote. Alex's chuckle held no humor. Mr. Foster, I know Millbrook better than anyone in that room. I built my first company there. Recognition flickered across several faces. Foster's eyes widened. Alexander Hood? The same Hood who? The very same, Alex confirmed. Though I'd prefer we focus on business rather than history. The acquisition proposal was comprehensive, a complete revival of the tech park, with Hood Innovations establishing its Western headquarters there. The numbers were impressive enough to silence any objections about his past. This would bring hundreds of jobs to Millbrook, Foster mused, flipping through the proposal. The economic impact would be transformative, Alex finished. Your technology hub is struggling because it never evolved. We'll change that. Hood Innovation specializes in next-generation supply chain solutions. Blockchain technology, AI integration, automated logistics, everything the modern tech sector needs. The board's questions were technical, focused on financials and implementation timelines. No one dared mention the scandal that had driven him from Millbrook a decade ago, though Alex could see the knowledge in their eyes. As the meeting concluded, Foster cleared his throat. There's one more thing, Mr. Hood. Your return will generate significant local interest. I'm aware. Alex's voice remained neutral. My PR team will handle any media inquiries. Now, shall we sign? The digital signatures were exchanged, contracts executed with clinical precision. Alex sat back in his ergonomic chair, watching the board members file out of their meeting room thousands of miles away. A decade of preparation had led to this moment. Wei entered with a fresh cup of green tea, another habit Alex had acquired in Asia. Congratulations, sir. Should I begin arrangements for the transition team? Yes. And Wei? Alex turned to look out over the Singapore skyline. Book me a penthouse at the Grand Millbrook. It's time I went home. The news of Hood Innovations' acquisition of Millbrook Tech Park broke during morning trading hours. Financial analysts praised the strategic expansion, while local Millbrook press scrambled to connect the dots between the Singapore-based tech giant and their town's most notorious scandal. Alex watched the coverage from his private jet 3 days later, sipping a single malt scotch as headlines scrolled across his tablet. Hood Innovations acquires struggling Millbrook Tech Park. Prodigal son returns. Alex Hood's billion-dollar comeback. From scandal to success. The resurrection of Alexander Hood. The flight from Singapore to Boston's Logan International Airport gave him time to review the changes he'd orchestrated. Hood Innovations' Western headquarters would transform the tech park into a cutting-edge facility. The local economy, which had stagnated in recent years, would experience a renaissance. And Alexander Hood would return not as a victim of betrayal, but as the architect of Millbrook's future. Landing at Logan, Alex found his chosen vehicle waiting, a midnight blue Bentley Continental, understated but unmistakably powerful. The drive to Millbrook gave him time to reacquaint himself with the landscape of his past. The town had changed less than he expected. The same Victorian houses lined the main streets, their facades perhaps a bit more weathered. The shopping district showed signs of economic struggle, more vacant storefronts than he remembered. But as he approached the tech park, the future was already visible in the construction equipment and renovations underway. The Grand Millbrook, the town's only luxury hotel, had prepared his penthouse suite with painstaking attention to detail. From its windows, Alex could see his old neighborhood, including the house where his life had unraveled a decade ago. New families lived there now, unknowing of the drama that had played out within those walls. Welcome back to Millbrook, Mr. Hood, the hotel manager said, handing over his key card. Is there anything else you require? Alex smiled, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. No, thank you. Everything is exactly as it should be. That evening, he stood at his penthouse window, watching the sun set over the town that had both made and broken him. Tomorrow, the business of transformation would begin. Hood Innovations would remake Millbrook's technological landscape, while its CEO's return would force the town to confront its past. His phone buzzed with a message from Miranda Hughes. Everything's ready. The children received their letters last month, as scheduled. Alex nodded to himself, slipping the phone back into his pocket. The first act of his return was complete. Now came the harder part, facing the people whose lives his disappearance had altered forever, and showing them exactly what they had underestimated. The lights of Millbrook twinkled below, a constellation of memories and possibilities. Alexander Hood had returned, bringing with him the power to reshape the town's future. The betrayed husband had become something far more formidable, a force of change that would transform Millbrook into a testament to his resilience and success. The Hood Innovations welcome reception filled the Grand Millbrook's ballroom with the town's business and social elite. Alex stood, watching the crowd while appearing to admire the view. A decade of Asian business dealings had taught him the value of careful observation. He noted how the crowd unconsciously divided itself, those who remembered the scandal keeping a respectful distance, while younger entrepreneurs and tech professionals gravitated toward him, eager to connect with the billionaire CEO. The power dynamics had shifted seismically since his departure. "Mr. Hood?" A familiar voice made him turn. Marissa stood there, her blonde hair now streaked with gray, wearing a dress that had seen better days. The years hadn't been kind to her, etching worry lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Dr. Reynolds," he replied coolly, using her maiden name. "This is a private corporate event. I need to talk to you about the children," she pressed, her voice low but urgent. "About support. The trust funds have provided everything as promised." Alex cut her off, his tone carrying the weight of boardroom authority. "Your financial difficulties are your own concern." Her face flushed. "They're your children too, regardless of biology. You raised them. Until I discovered 15 years of systematic deception," he finished, taking a measured sip of his whiskey. "How is Bruce these days? I heard the accounting firm keeps him busy." The mention of Bruce made her flinch. After his financial empire crumbled, Bruce Cummins had been forced to take a position as a junior accountant, his reputation in ruins. The mighty financial advisor reduced to reconciling other people's books. "You've made your point," Marissa hissed. "You've won. You're successful. We're struggling. Isn't that enough?" Alex turned to face her fully, his expression impassive. "This isn't about winning, Marissa. This is about consequences. Every choice has them, yours, Bruce's, my mother's, and mine. I chose to rebuild. What did you choose?" Before she could respond, a commotion near the ballroom entrance drew their attention. Thomas, Emma, and Lucas, now 24, 22, and 19 respectively, stood in the doorway, their presence causing a ripple of whispers through the crowd. Alex had seen photos. Of course, Miranda kept him updated on their major life events. But seeing them in person, as adults, made his chest tighten. Thomas had grown into his features, looking so much like Bruce it was startling. Emma carried herself with a dancer's grace, her auburn hair swept up elegantly. Lucas, the youngest, clutched a familiar envelope in his hand, the letter Alex had left with Miranda. "Dad," Thomas spoke first, his voice deeper than Alex remembered. "Or should we call you Mr. Hood now?" "That depends on you," Alex replied carefully. "I assume you've read the letters." Emma stepped forward, her movements precise. "We have. All these years, we thought you'd abandoned us. But you were watching over us, weren't you? The anonymous college recommendations, the internship opportunities that seemed to appear at exactly the right moments. The trust funds were meant to ensure your futures," Alex explained, aware of the growing audience around them. "Your choices were your own." Lucas, who'd recently started at MIT, finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell us the truth back then? Why wait until we were 18? "Because you deserved a childhood free from adult betrayals," Alex answered, meeting each of their gazes in turn. "Your mother and Bruce's choices weren't your burden to bear." Marissa made a choked sound, but Emma silenced her with a look that spoke volumes about their relationship. "We've made our own judgments over the years," she said quietly. "Watched how everyone handled the aftermath of what happened. The letters explained everything," Thomas added. "But we'd already figured out most of it. The way Mom and Bruce acted after you left. How grandmother tried to buy our affection with gifts while living off her reduced allowance. Speaking of Caroline," Alex's tone carried a hint of steel. "How is my mother?" "Living in Sunset Grove Retirement Community," Lucas supplied. "She tries to convince everyone there that she's just downsizing by choice." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Caroline Root, once the grand orchestrator of Millbrook's social scene, now lived on a strict allowance in a modest retirement facility. Her role in the deception had cost her not just her wealth, but her social standing. "Mr. Hood?" Wei appeared at his elbow. "The Tech Park board members have arrived. They're eager to discuss the renovation timeline." Alex nodded, then turned back to his former family. "My office is always open to you three," he said quietly. "Not for money. The trusts handle that, but for anything else you need." The choice to maintain contact is yours. As he moved toward the waiting board members, he heard Marissa's last desperate attempt. Alex, please. The hospital board is reviewing my position. One word from you. He paused, not turning around. Your choices, your consequences, Marissa. I learned that lesson 10 years ago. Now it's your turn. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of business discussions and social niceties. But Alex noticed how Thomas, Emma, and Lucas remained at the reception, moving through the crowd with the ease of young adults who had grown up in Millbrook's social scene. They were neither hiding from their connection to him nor flaunting it. They were simply present, making their own choices. Later that night, in his penthouse suite, Alex received 3 separate text messages. From Thomas, lunch next week? There's a new place downtown. From Emma, my dance company's performing next month. Sending you tickets. From Lucas, could use your insight on a blockchain project for school? He smiled, saving their numbers. The confrontation he'd anticipated for 10 years had transformed into something unexpected. Not an ending, but perhaps a new beginning. The transformation of Millbrook Tech Park moved swiftly under Hood Innovation's direction. Construction crews worked around the clock, converting outdated office spaces into state-of-the-art research and development facilities. The town buzzed with activity as new employees arrived, housing prices rose, and local businesses experienced a renaissance. From his office in the newly renovated main building, Alex watched his vision take shape. The glass-walled space offered a panoramic view of the campus, where Hood Innovation's signature blue and silver logo now adorned every building. The latest employment figures, sir. Wei presented a tablet displaying the data. We've hired over 300 local residents, with another 200 positions opening next quarter. Good. How's the training program progressing? Excellently. The partnership with Millbrook Community College is paying off. Even Bruce Cummins applied for one of the accounting positions, though HR flagged the potential conflict. Alex's lips curved slightly. Let him apply. Merit-based decisions only. No preferential treatment, positive or negative. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Bruce, once the mastermind of complex financial schemes, might end up processing payroll for the company run by the man he had betrayed. A knock at the door interrupted their discussion. Miranda Hughes entered, elegant as ever despite the decade that had passed. Your mother's here, she announced without preamble. Security called up from the lobby. Alex leaned back in his chair, considering. Caroline had been trying to arrange a meeting since his return, sending messages through various intermediaries. Her latest attempt, showing up unannounced, was a classic Caroline route maneuver. Send her up, he decided. Wei, please stay. Caroline appeared minutes later, looking smaller than he remembered. The designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide how time and reduced circumstances had affected her. She clutched her handbag like a shield as she entered his office. Alexander, she began, her voice trembling slightly. You've done so well for yourself. What do you want, mother? She flinched at his tone but pressed on. I thought, perhaps, now that you're back and so successful, we could try to repair our relationship. Our relationship ended the day I discovered you helped orchestrate 15 years of deception, Alex replied evenly. The annual support payments will continue as agreed, provided you maintain your distance. I'm your mother, she protested. Everything I did was because I wanted the best for you. No. Alex's voice carried the weight of years of reflection. Everything you did was about control. You thought you knew better than me what my life should be, so you helped Bruce and Marissa deceive me for 15 years. Those were your choices, mother. These are the consequences. Caroline's facade cracked. The retirement community. It's not where I belong. Surely you can see that? With your resources now, the monthly allowance is generous enough for your needs. Alex cut her off. Wei, please escort my mother out. Ensure security updates her status. No unscheduled visits. As Caroline was led away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Alex turned back to the window. Below, he could see new employees entering the building, their Hood Innovations ID badges catching the morning sun. The weeks that followed brought more changes to Millbrook. Alex maintained his distance from the old social circles, focusing instead on the tech park's development and his growing relationship with Thomas, Emma, and Lucas. Thomas joined Hood Innovations' management training program, proving himself capable without trading on his connection to Alex. Emma's dance company performed to a full house, including Alex in the audience, though he slipped out before she could introduce him to her fellow dancers. Lucas sought his advice on technical projects, their conversations flowing naturally from blockchain architecture to life in general. The children's trust funds ensured their independence, while their individual choices showed the adults they were becoming. They maintained relationships with their biological parents, but drew clear boundaries, understanding the complex web of decisions that had shaped their family history. One crisp autumn morning, almost a year after his return, Alex stood in his office watching Lucas guide a group of MIT students through the tech park. The youngest of his non-biological children had grown into a thoughtful young man, already showing promise in both technical innovation and leadership. The occasion was Lucas's graduation party, a celebration Alex had chosen to host at Hood Innovations headquarters. The guest list was carefully curated. No appearances from Marissa, Bruce, or Caroline, but filled instead with Lucas's professors, classmates, and siblings. "Your son has remarkable insight into blockchain applications," Professor Chen remarked to Alex during the reception. "His thesis on decentralized supply chain verification is revolutionary." Alex smiled, watching Lucas explain a complex technical concept to his fellow graduates. "He's his own person," he replied. "I just provided opportunities. He chose what to do with them." The party moved to the rooftop garden, another of Hood Innovations' additions to the tech park. Thomas and Emma had already arrived, their presence completing the picture of what family could mean when chosen rather than merely inherited. "Did you ever imagine this?" Thomas asked, joining Alex at the railing. "When you left 10 years ago?" Alex considered the question, looking out over the transformed landscape of Millbrook. The tech park's renovation had sparked a revival throughout the town. New businesses occupied once empty storefronts, young professionals filled renovated apartments, and the community college's tech program had a waiting list for the first time in its history. "I imagine success," he admitted. "But this." He gestured to include not just the view but the gathering behind them. "This is something better." Emma approached, her dancer's grace evident even in casual movement. "Mom tried to convince me to ask you for more money again," she said, rolling her eyes. "I told her the trust fund was more than generous, and her financial problems weren't your responsibility." "How is she doing?" Alex asked, more out of curiosity than concern. "Working at a small private practice now," Thomas supplied. "After the hospital board. Well, let's just say her reputation never recovered." They watched as Lucas accepted congratulations from his peers, his MIT acceptance ring catching the sunlight. The boy who had once built Lego cities on Alex's living room floor had grown into a man of substance and integrity. "You know what's funny?" Lucas joined them, loosening his tie. "Bruce tried to take credit for my natural aptitude for numbers at the last family dinner Mom insisted on. I told him genetic contribution doesn't equal parental influence." The siblings shared a knowing look, years of understanding passed between them. They had watched their biological parents' choices lead to diminished lives while the man who had chosen to love them, despite everything, had shown them a different path. "The trust funds were just money," Emma reflected. "What you really gave us was an example of how to handle betrayal with dignity, how to rebuild without losing ourselves, and how to choose who we want to be," Thomas added, "regardless of DNA." The sun began to set over Millbrook, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Below, the tech park's lights began to illuminate, creating a constellation of progress and possibility. The town that had witnessed Alex's humiliation now stood as a testament to his resilience. "I got offered a position in Singapore," Lucas announced suddenly. "Hood Innovations R&D division. Before you say anything, I applied through normal channels, used a different last name. Earned it on my own merits." Alex nodded, pride evident in his expression. "When do you start?" "That depends," Lucas grinned. "Think you could show me around your side of the world first? Maybe introduce me to that martial arts instructor you mentioned?" The request hung in the air, representing more than just a job or a trip. It was an acknowledgement of the relationship they had built, one founded on choice rather than obligation. "I'd like that," Alex said simply. As the party continued around them, Alex reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The betrayal that had shattered his world had also freed him to create something new. Not just a successful company or a transformed town, but a different kind of family, one built on truth, choice, and mutual respect. The residents of Millbrook still whispered about the scandal sometimes, but more often they spoke of the transformation, both of their town and the man who had returned to remake it. They pointed to the Hood Innovations campus as a symbol of what was possible when tragedy became fuel for triumph. But for Alex, standing with the three young adults who had chosen to keep him in their lives, the real victory wasn't in the buildings or the business success. It was in the understanding that family, real family, could be built from the ashes of betrayal, stronger for being chosen rather than merely inherited. The sun set on Millbrook, and with it, the last shadows of old wounds faded. Alexander Hood had found something better than revenge. He had found peace, purpose, and a family bound by choice rather than blood. His new life, built on the foundation of integrity and determination, stood as a testament not to what he had lost, but to what he had chosen to create. In the end, the story that Millbrook would remember wasn't just about the betrayed husband who became a billionaire. It was about a man who showed that the strongest bonds aren't those we're born into, but those we choose to forge, maintain, and honor through our actions and choices. The tech park's lights twinkled below like stars, a constellation of possibilities realized. Alex stood surrounded by his chosen family, watching Lucas explain his blockchain theories to eager listeners, seeing Thomas discuss management strategies with department heads, and observing Emma's quiet confidence as she navigated the social dynamics with practiced ease. This was his legacy. Not the buildings, not the wealth, but the living proof that integrity, resilience, and the courage to choose one's own path could transform even the deepest betrayal into a foundation for something greater. In the end, Alex had built more than a successful company. He had created a testament to the power of choosing who we become, regardless of who we were meant to be. Epilogue: 5 years after Alex's return to Millbrook. The autumn wind scattered golden leaves across the grounds of Sunset Grove Retirement Community, where Caroline Root sat in her modest apartment, watching a financial news segment about Hood Innovations' latest breakthrough. Her son's company had just announced a revolutionary blockchain platform that would transform global supply chains, sending the stock price soaring to unprecedented heights. The irony wasn't lost on her. 15 years ago, she had orchestrated what she thought was best for her son's future, believing Bruce Cummins to be the better connection. Now, her monthly allowance, generous but strictly controlled, came from the very son whose life she had tried to manipulate. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandson Lucas, now a rising star in Hood Innovations' Singapore R&D division. Like all her grandchildren's messages, it was polite but distant, sharing professional news without personal warmth. The children had learned the cost of manipulation from watching their parents and grandmother fall from grace. Across town, in a small medical clinic housed in a strip mall, Marissa Reynolds finished her shift. The sign on her door read "Family Practice," a far cry from her former position as a prestigious pediatrician at Millbrook General. The prescription fraud scandal that had cost her medical license had taken years to overcome, requiring extensive rehabilitation and supervision before she could practice again. Her tiny office was a constant reminder of her fallen status. Where once she had commanded a large private practice within the hospital, now she treated minor ailments in a clinic that catered to those without insurance. The walls, once adorned with prestigious certificates, now held only her basic medical license, newly reinstated, but permanently marked with restrictions. Bruce Cummins's life had followed a similar downward trajectory. The former financial titan now worked as a mid-level accountant at Hood Innovations, his application accepted purely on merit after years of struggling in smaller firms. The irony of processing payroll for his former rival's empire wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Bruce himself. His marriage to Krista had ended in a divorce that stripped him of everything. Valerie Stevens, Krista's attorney, had been ruthlessly efficient in exposing every hidden asset, every offshore account. The man who had once managed millions now lived in a one-bedroom apartment, driving a used Toyota to work. The affair that had seemed so cleverly managed, so perfectly orchestrated, had unraveled not just their marriages but their entire social world. Bruce and Marissa occasionally saw each other at their children's major life events, their interaction limited to stiff nods and avoided gazes. The passion that had driven them to deceive Alex for 15 years had withered in the harsh light of consequences. Their children, however, had flourished in unexpected ways. Thomas, now 29, had risen through Hood Innovations' corporate structure entirely on his own merit, becoming director of operations for the North American division. His relationship with Alex had evolved into one of mutual respect and shared business acumen. Emma, at 27, had transformed her dance background into a successful therapeutic movement program, helping trauma survivors heal through artistic expression. She maintained offices in both Millbrook and Singapore, splitting her time between continents and occasionally consulting for Hood Innovations' employee wellness program. Lucas, the youngest at 24, had become a force in the tech world. His blockchain innovations had earned him recognition separate from his connection to Hood Innovations, though he chose to continue working within the company that had given him his start. His relationship with Alex had deepened into a true mentorship, unmarred by biological connections or social expectations. The three siblings had developed a unique perspective on family and loyalty. They maintained dutiful but distant relationships with their biological parents, while forming deeper bonds with Alex based on shared values and mutual choice. Their trust funds, managed impeccably by independent trustees, had provided them with opportunities without creating dependency. At a recent tech conference in Singapore, Lucas had been asked about his relationship with Alex Hood. His response made headlines: "DNA doesn't make a father. Choices do. The man who chose to love us despite betrayal, who showed us how to succeed with integrity. That's the father we chose to keep in our lives." Miranda Hughes, now semi-retired but still serving as Hood Innovations' chief legal counsel, kept a framed copy of that quote in her office. She had watched the story unfold from that first meeting with a betrayed husband to the empire it had spawned. The letters she had held for the children, delivered at precisely the right moment, had helped bridge the gap between past and future. Hood Innovations had transformed Millbrook into a tech hub that attracted global talent. The town's character had shifted from a sleepy suburban enclave to a vibrant community where innovation and tradition coexisted. The old social hierarchy that had protected Bruce and Marissa's deception had been replaced by a meritocracy that valued achievement over connections. Alex himself had evolved beyond the role of betrayed husband or successful CEO. At 57, he had become a mentor to young entrepreneurs, particularly those who had faced personal betrayals. His story had become a case study in business schools, not just for its technical success, but for its lessons about integrity and resilience. He maintained his practice of martial arts, the discipline helping him stay grounded despite his massive success. His Singapore dojo still reserved early morning hours for his private training, though he now spent equal time between Asia and Millbrook. The physical transformation that had begun during his exile had become a permanent part of his character, reflecting the inner strength he had discovered through adversity. The original Hood residence, where the fateful Thanksgiving revelation had occurred, had been converted into a technology incubator for startups. Alex had bought the property through a subsidiary and transformed it into a space where new entrepreneurs could build their dreams. The garden where he had first overheard Marissa's phone call now featured meditation spaces and collaborative work areas. Caroline's beach house, once the scene of so many secretive meetings, had been sold years ago. The proceeds had gone to establishing a scholarship fund for children of broken homes, managed by the same trustees who oversaw the children's trust funds. The property itself had become a retreat center for corporate innovation workshops, its dark history transformed into a space for creative breakthrough. Krista Cummins had remarried and moved to California, where she ran a successful interior design firm. She occasionally collaborated with Hood Innovations on office space projects, her professional relationship with Alex marked by mutual respect for how they had handled their respective betrayals. The annual Hood Innovations shareholders meeting, held in the renovated Millbrook Tech Park, had become a reminder of how completely the power dynamics had shifted. Bruce, required to attend as a mid-level employee, sat quietly in the back while his former rival presented visions of global technological transformation. Marissa watched the live stream from her clinic during lunch breaks, seeing the life that might have been hers had she made different choices. Thomas, Emma, and Lucas attended these meetings as both shareholders and family members, their presence a testament to the complex ways that choice could transcend biology. They had learned to navigate their dual heritage with grace, acknowledging their biological parents while choosing to emulate the values Alex had demonstrated. On particularly clear days, Alex sometimes stood in his office atop the Hood Innovations Tower, looking out over the town that had witnessed both his humiliation and his triumph. The view reminded him of his Singapore office, though the landscapes could not be more different. Both perspectives represented the same truth, that success was the best revenge, but peace was an even better victory. His relationship with his children had evolved into something unique in the annals of family dynamics. They were bound not by obligation or DNA, but by shared values and mutual choice. Each had found their own path while maintaining the connection they had chosen to preserve. During a recent graduation ceremony at MIT, where Lucas had been invited to give the commencement speech, the young man had spoken about the nature of family and choice. We are not defined by the actions of others, even those closest to us. We are defined by how we choose to respond, by the integrity we maintain in the face of betrayal, and by the relationships we choose to honor. The speech had gone viral, prompting renewed interest in the story that had become almost mythical in Millbrook. Local papers ran retrospectives, comparing the town before and after the Hood Innovations transformation. The contrast was stark, not just in economic terms, but in how the community valued truth over social pretense. Marissa and Bruce's affair, once the scandal of Millbrook, had become a cautionary tale about the cost of deception. Their choices had cost them not just their marriages and social standing, but their professional dignity and their children's respect. They lived with the daily reminder of their decisions, watching from the sidelines as the man they had betrayed reshaped the world they had once thought they controlled. Caroline's role as the architect of deception had earned her a special place in the town's cautionary legends. Her belief that she knew best, that she could orchestrate her son's life without consequences, had cost her everything she valued: wealth, social position, and most importantly, her relationship with her son and grandchildren. Yet the story that emerged wasn't ultimately about revenge or justice. It was about transformation of a man, a family, a town, and the very nature of success. Alex Hood had shown that the strongest relationships are those we choose to maintain, that integrity is more valuable than social position, and that true family can be built from the ashes of betrayal. The tech park stood as a physical testament to this transformation, its innovative architecture reflecting the changes in the town's character. But the real monument was invisible. It lived in the choices made by those who had witnessed the unfolding drama, in the lessons learned about loyalty and consequence, and in the understanding that family is not just what we're born into, but what we choose to create. As autumn painted Millbrook in shades of gold and crimson, the town remained a living testament to the power of choice over circumstance, of integrity over deception, and of the peace that comes from building something new rather than dwelling on what was lost. The betrayed husband had become not just a success story, but a symbol of how to transform pain into purpose, betrayal into breakthrough, and loss into legacy. The story of Alexander Hood and the choices that reshaped Millbrook continued to influence new generations, reminding them that our lives are not determined by what others do to us, but by how we choose to respond. In the end, the greatest triumph was not in the wealth created or the empires built, but in the demonstration that character, choice, and integrity could transform even the deepest betrayal into a foundation for something greater than revenge. A legacy of resilience, wisdom, and the power of choosing one's own path.